fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, hold your position for 30 seconds. Hey everybody, it's Tom McKay right here once again on a Monday night, 3D Politics. I've got two Davids with me tonight, David Van and David Oldham, for another exciting Zoom meeting here at 3D Politics Live on Facebook every Monday at 7 p.m. And before we get started, we got a lot of stuff we're going to get to, and we know that. But before we get started, what do you guys got going on in your personal lives before we kick off the show, Biz?
Well, Friday was day one that we get to dine in, and so I made sure that I went out and dined in.
You actually went out to a place and stayed. You didn't eat in the car.
Exactly. I went to one place and they were not yet dining in, and they wanted me to eat in the car, and I said no. I'm going to go find a place that I can actually, be a human being in. And
right. Now, hey Dave, you're not working on that Rubik's Cube while you're talking, are you?
Me?
No, sorry. Oldham, sorry. Oldham, sounds like you're working on a Rubik's Cube while you're talking there.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
So, anyway, the was very nice to be back in a measure of society. It was a little disconcerting in retrospect, having your waiter come up to you in a mask and gloves. Makes you wonder, is the place really worth eating at?
Yeah.
Or was it before the new requirement?
Like you wonder if you're getting your oil changed or surgery, I'm not sure.
What I want to know is, Oldham, what does restaurant food taste like?
It actually
I don't remember.
It was
there you
decent, go. But you know what? On day one, they need to get back in the swing of things.
Really?
I expected that it would be a lot busier, and it wasn't as busy as I thought. And some of them, and it looked like they hadn't prepared, and they hadn't done all the prep work, all the sous chef work and things like that. And so it looked like my vegetables were a little underdone because they didn't have them parboiled and ready just to heat up and throw out there. And so
it's a travesty.
Getting back in the swing of things is going to take a little bit of time, but let me encourage everybody, get out there.
Van, what happened to you?
All right. Well, first of all, comment on Oldham.
Yeah.
I remember the Samsung Galaxy Note 8, and I remember the early adopters who had them blow up in their pants pocket because the batteries are bad. Oldham,
right.
There are certain drawbacks to be an early adapter.
True. That's true.
And I want to thank you for your service to society.
Way to push through, yeah.
But otherwise, it was very good. It was
now,
very good.
That's good.
Friday, I spent the day with my granddaughter for the first time in weeks and weeks and weeks.
Nice.
And I tell you, I'm smitten. She is my favorite babysitter. And we had a blast. And I tell you what, we just, when the time came to go home, she stood in front of the door and said, "You can't leave."
Oh,
that's special.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
She doesn't really know you, does she?
That's the highlight of my day. I tell you what. So
I have noticed that's sweet. That is really sweet.
Yeah.
I did notice one thing about Oldham. When you go out in today's new society, they are so busy working under the thumb of government now that they have forgotten what their basic format is, and that is it's service. When a person walks in, what you could do quite easily is, even if you have a mask on, acknowledge their existence. Say, "I know you exist. I see you," and then go about your freak out. But what I notice is you stand there, and because you're 6 feet away, they think you're invisible. It's like,
well,
they should at least say, "Hey, I see you. We're coming to you." Basic.
Yeah.
Formatting.
Our dear friend Lori Gracie posted something this morning I thought was really, really telling. She said, God, I miss the days of being out in public and you see people and they have a pleasant smile. And you don't know if they're about to just launch at you or they're glad to see you. You just don't know.
Well, I actually had somebody who came by, gave me a smile, expected a return, and it took her a minute to realize that I couldn't see her smile underneath her mandatory mask. And so she commented that she had actually smiled to me, and then realized that I couldn't see it, and so I then returned her smile, but still never saw it. I was the loser in that one.
I said what I've noticed is I used to brag about the two things I miss when I leave Oklahoma is fine airport parking and quick trip convenience etiquette.
Yes.
There was a thing about it was almost Americana. There was it cut across race and gender and age. People had an etiquette at the quick trip that's just the way you do it at a quick trip. Well, you come and go and you hold the door and there's a timing and they've destroyed the quick trip etiquette.
Well, they really
I'm broken up about it.
And the service. I mean, I haven't been on a quick trip for quite some time now. And they went to only 32-ounce drinks that they sell out of their fountain. And if you get one, you have to get their top from them, which they pull out of some janitorial sanitation liquid or something.
With tongs.
I asked what it was, what the sanitation liquid was. Nobody knew. So I left my drink and I just walked out because I will not submit myself to some unknown.
Did they use tongs to get the lid?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Then what do you got?
And it's at the checkout counter.
Yes.
I went in there with my big old refillable all day mug. You know what they are, right?
That's questionable. That's questionable already.
Refills are not allowed. You have to buy one of our new ones. So I bought it. I go over to get lids, and there's no lids. And I thought, what the heck? And so finally, I looked at it, this 32-ounce, and I thought, I'll take the lid off my big all-day mug. And I just stuck it inside there and put my lid on. It worked perfect. And I go up there to paper. I said, I got your 32-ouncer inside of here. And I pulled it off. I said, what the heck is this? No lids. He said, oh, no, we got them here. I said, well, I didn't see a sign. Yeah, there's a sign somewhere over there that, like you're supposed to read every square inch of that deal. So
you're lucky you didn't get tased and dragged out, David.
Yeah, by the health department Nazis.
And I'll tell you, the thing that's got me is the corporate complicity in all of the stuff that's going down. Now we heard last week that after we aired, later in the week, Costco was going to require all patrons to wear masks if you wish to shop at Costco.
Yeah.
And so I was with Lori today, and we went in, and she canceled her membership until they get their act in line. And
he's with Lori.
We don't even know who they are.
And so the same Lori you mentioned earlier. Anyway,
or her evil twin. Dun, dun, dun.
So anyway, the point is that you've got all of these corporations trying to violate the rule of service first, and so forth, because enough people, and it was amazing the number of people who were just willing to go along. We got to start the show, guys. We're 15 minutes in. This is some great. Look, we're so interesting. Us as a group of guys
This is my only social contact with the world.
David, don't undercut me. I'm saying we are so amazingly interesting as a group of guys that except for Van, I don't know what happened to him. Anyway, me and Oldham, we are so amazingly interesting that we help Van out every chance we can to get him out of the house and on to the
still
Zoom.
loves me.
Look, I know you're the wizard of the state. You know all the backroom secrets. Hey, we are going to get started here with all of the business. Tom McKay here on 3D Politics. You can catch me at Tommy McKay, Facebook and Twitter, McKay at 3dpoliticslive.com. David Oldham, of course, over there at constitutionalgrounds.com. And, of course, the wizard of state statistics and understanding, David Van at Who Said It First, Soonerpolitics.org. Politics.live. We got a lot of stuff. We got all sorts of information coming to you from all these Davids. Meat processing plant exploding with COVID. We've got prison workers with COVID busting out all over. We got cop on cop, what I call the violent obedience feedback loop. It's dangerous. If someone could just obey first. And then Biden signs indirect link to the Libertarians, which sent a shiver down my spine. And some people didn't even think I had one. So here we are. So what do you want to do first, Van?
Oh, should we go with the isolated breakouts of COVID around the nation?
Yeah, let's do that. Cool. We got a great graphic. Yeah.
This is a real interesting deal because let me shut some things off here.
Yeah.
What we've got going on is there are several places around the United States where the density of the COVID virus spread is worse than New York City. And I want to show you one of those things here. And I'm pulling up this map here. Let's take a look at a big map.
There you go.
Now, what you're seeing here is, let's start with up here in Minnesota. You see this, I put it in a box here. The JBS meat processing plant in the far southwestern corner of Minnesota. There's this little county where if you look real close, you'll see a dark, dark red, like a burgundy box. That's Nobles County. And the county seat there is Worthington. Worthington is home to a meat processing plant. It used to be the Swift meat processing. Remember the Swift turkeys you get at Christmas time and things like that? Well, eventually a Brazilian firm called JBS bought out different companies. They bought out Pilgrim's Pride. They bought out some others. They are now the world's largest meat processing facility. Now, all of these facilities are supposed to be inspected by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. You know, when you buy a steak, it says inspected by USDA. Well, sadly, the USDA, our good old federal government, is falling down on us.
No, they don't.
Come on, that's got to be a fake news.
I listened to the Catholic priest on WCCO Channel 4. I grew up listening to them out of Minneapolis, and they were interviewing the priest from the Catholic Church there in Worthington, and he talked about the special needs of these workers because they're almost completely immigrants that are working at this facility. Not that means the virus is going to be spread any more or any less, but when you are a Brazilian firm, I don't know, but somehow you have more ability to bring in foreign workers to run your plants here, something. But anyway.
Well, culture has an effect on the way that it affects human hygiene.
Yeah.
And so where we're from affects how we clean ourselves. And so
I talked to several of my family up in central Minnesota. My sister-in-law, I'm from a big family, so, it seems like my family does everything. Well, there's lots of us. I have a sister-in-law who was the mayor of my hometown, the same town Charles Lindbergh and his family grew up in.
Smothers Brothers.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway.
I saw your family on Ancient Aliens one time. Go ahead.
Yeah. They said a couple weeks ago, they said, our county doesn't have a single case. Minnesota was number 50, the least number of cases in the nation. They have now overtaken several other states, including Oklahoma, and have become one of the leading states for the outbreak of this virus. And it's largely because of what's going on there in Worthington, because you've now got, as of this morning, 940 workers and other community family members that have the COVID virus. And you got one little rural hospital that just isn't going to be able to handle them if it gets bad. This is something that's happened. We're talking just in the last 5 days. So let's move on.
Hold on, I got a question.
Yeah.
It says JBS meat processing, 12% of cases. That means in the state of Minnesota.
The state's cases, that is absolutely
12%.
right.
And when you say case, meaning case of what? Tested positive?
Right, of the officially acknowledged by the state. As we know, and Oldham will tell you, there's plenty more people have been exposed and already.
Oh yeah, but that's the number. But it's all, right. but a full 12% is coming from one meat processing plant.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. In one little county, the whole county's only got like 20,000 people. Okay. Let's move down to Indiana. Whoops, we got.
No, that looks good. I like that because I can see exactly what you're talking about. Oh, yeah. I can see him waving right there from the processing plant.
Oh, wasn't supposed to do that, but I don't even know how to get out of here.
Well, you can undo share and get out of there. You can just quit sharing. But I'll tell you what, you were talking about the Pope earlier, and I will say, you know, as a defender and as a an apologist for the Catholic Church, it's much easier to defend transubstantiation than it is inerrancy of the Pope.
Yes, that's true.
Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Yes. So, but a number of these are similar, okay? The Tyson meatpacking plant up there in north central Indiana, you've got a similar case where you got several hundred people testing positive, and there again, we've got, largely immigrant people. Actually, that one, they said they're refugees working there. As you know, in Minnesota, they got a lot of Somalis coming. Obama seemed to love to bring Somalis.
Okay,
here.
Do you mind, because it's actually worthy, bring that graphic back up, because you're talking about another area. The graphic is totally worthy. It blew out on us. Zoom is a funny thing to work with. So what you're talking about is we have one, but this isn't Italy and this isn't all these. The reason Brazil's pertinent is because it's Brazilians here. And we're talking about what's going on in our United States. He's going to bring up this graphic. We're talking about one meat processing plant that seems to be an outstanding outlier where the numbers are just leaping off 12% all in one state in one freaking processing plant. That ought to tell you there's a problem there. Then we've got a prison situation where the prison, it's not just because they're packed together in the prison. There's also an industry of meat processors within the prison, in addition to these aliens that are coming in as I guess they're would they be documented workers or would they be undocumented?
Yes.
So they're documented workers.
To borrow from your phraseology, they received a special dispensation of Obama. Okay, it's not quite dispensation of the Pope, but it's close.
Hey, if that's not working for you, the graphic, don't worry about it. They know where Texas is. They know the shape of it.
Yeah. So anyway, what we ended up with, see, now I've done all the work.
Okay, if you got it, bring it. It was worth the work because it's a great graphic. We talk about Texas, So
right.
we talked about the JBS meat processing up north, Minnesota. What's your next point?
So now, if you understand the map between Illinois and Indiana, there we got the Tyson meat, 7% of that state's cases come out of there. And there again, those are refugees working that one. Again, that doesn't mean they know more or less, but you got to speak this, huh?
Why is it? I never heard the slogan that refugees were doing the work that Americans wouldn't do.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm drawing from the local news media. In each one of these cases, I went to the people on the ground right there. I think on that story, I went out to Indianapolis, where they cited local sources. So there's a meatpacking plant. Let's move on quickly here. Guyman, Oklahoma. We've got, it's called, I believe, Sea Coast Foods. It's a pork processing plant.
Sea Coast. It's clearly a fraud.
Unbelievable.
Haven't you ever written
Seaboard.
a novel like a murder mystery? Seacoast. Yeah,
Seaboard.
right. Oh,
Seaboard.
Seaboard. Yeah,
Processing.
right.
Now
Yeah.
they are actually a subsidy out of another outfit out of St. Joseph, Missouri. But here again, over this weekend, another 100 and some test positive out in Guyman. I mean, we talked to Kenny Bob Tapp, 10 days ago. Guyman doesn't have that much. They're the big town, and they're hardly, I mean, you blink and you go through it, you know? So we got that one. Now get this one. In Lincoln County, Arkansas, the Cummins Prison and Meat Processing Plant. The state prisons in Arkansas.
Wow, look at that.
Running prison industries. They've got farming, gardening, they got cattle, and they got a meat processing plant.
Wow, if the election were held today, the prison and meat processing plant could win.
Yeah. So get this. The state has only had about 1,800 cases. But just when they had their meeting yesterday, the prison warden says, we aren't done with the paperwork, but so far I can positively identify over 600 prisoners at this one prison testing positive. Okay? So now you've got that one. Then you move over to Tennessee, Bledsoe County Jail. 5% of the state of Tennessee's positive COVID cases were just tested positive out of one county jail. And this is Dayton, Tennessee, which is no big metropolis. Okay, you're talking size of maybe Muskogee, probably not even that big. And then you go straight north to Marion, Ohio, to the state prison in Ohio.
Hey, Dave, you're going real fast. If I may try to prematurely interject a bad joke here. You know, the Bledsoe County Jail, those antiseptic wet wipes are hard to come by. Go ahead.
Yeah, so there you go. And in Marion County of Ohio.
What's the deal? The reason why, because people are watching, Dave. And the thing is that a lot of this stuff, so 5% this and that, and most people will say, well, yeah, they're all packed together here, and they're all packed together there. And we're certainly not going to say immigrants are the only people who get the disease, right? So, yes. But the point I'm trying to make is the Marion prison clean? Is the Bledsoe County Jail clean?
The important thing
regardless of who's in there.
Whether it's a federally inspected business facility or it's a jail, we've got a failure on the part of our government.
Both governments, yes.
Yes. Whether it's the county jail, the state prison, or the federal Department of Agriculture, because all of them are screwing up.
Oldham, what say you before I reset?
Well, I would just concur with David's last point. This is a government problem, and again, we're going to see these kinds of cases. We have to get over this hysteric phobia of catching a disease and trying to stave it off and not ever come down with something, because it's just not going to happen.
Right. My point.
And what we need to do is start talking about learning how to get through it, because that is not being talked about by anybody in any government, because that doesn't fit the allopathic narrative.
Right. What's your point, Van?
Okay. My point in this is none of this is the fault of people like you and me going down to the hardware store.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
They're cracking down on us when it's them who's responsible for the worst outbreaks in the nation.
Well, and look at California
nice
for
point.
that. You have some protests on the beach in Orange County. Okay, Laguna Beach, Huntington Beach. They had protests saying reopen the state, reopen everything.
Yeah.
Orange County has some of the lowest infection rates
Yeah.
in California. The conservative, that and Kern County are the two biggest conservative counties in California. Okay. Because of the protests in Orange County, he shut all 850 miles of beaches, just declared them to be closed. And so again, it's the attack on the dissidents, the attack on the ordinary person who isn't contributing to the problem, isn't a part of the problem. They don't know whether they are a part of the problem or not.
Yes.
No.
Yeah. My problem is they say we screwed up, so we got to crack down on you to make up for our screw ups. You know,
but there's nothing new in that. Let's face it. This is people are finally waking up to what people like us have been saying for decades.
90% of the people who lived through the Civil Rights Act of 1965 were never taught that there was a Civil Rights Act of 1865. Set real quickly here, 3D Politics Live on Facebook Live. I'm Tommy McKay, your fine host here. You can always catch me at Tom E. McKay on Facebook and Twitter, and of course, McKay at 3dpoliticslive.com. I've got David Van from Soonerpolitics.org and David Oldham from ConstitutionalGrounds.com. We are discussing all of the exciting business of the day. And so a lot of great stats there. And what we're finding out is the government is letting us down. And what we're also finding out is that what people say the government, and you guys know and I know, but your general person, when they say government, they don't realize, well, you're talking about at least three, you know, the federal, state, and your municipality. And what you'll notice from G.T. Bynum, mayor of Tulsa, as well as Joy Hoffmeister, state superintendent, both of them gave nods to the White House down through the governor to them. Each of them were taking a nod from upper to down. There was no local representation among any of them. They're all like, we're waiting to see what they tell us to do from up above. And everybody fell in line like a good little soldier. You'll notice that we have a place that our current mayor, G.T. Bynum, told us to pitch in money for. Hey, you know what? Let's pay a lot of money and build a beautiful park. We'll call it something we can't do in the future. Gather. Way to go, buddy. Your stupid socialist program of spend a bunch of money collectively so that you can control the park we don't go to. I want to hurry up and fill that sand. I want the sand in the skateboard park next Monday. This is ridiculous. The children will be out there spreading COVID any minute like a bunch of prisoners packing meat. Why do we have refugees? I don't know, packing meat.
I want to tell you, Governor Stitt now has disciples. At least one out of New Mexico.
Yeah, somebody declared something.
Yes. So, Oldham and I were talking to the attorney, Frank Urbanik. He wrote a great story. He uncovered it. Got to give him credit for it. That our governor, in order to collect power unto himself rather than the health department, instead of declaring a health emergency early on, he declared a state of widespread riot. In fact, Nathan Dahm last week exposed him on it. So, it's pretty solid on this. But as soon as we reported on it, Sooner Politics, he called a press conference next day and declared the health emergency, brought in the health department head and notified the legislature and started doing everything by the rules. So we're making a difference here. We're holding accountable. Yeah, but according to what the statutes
rules, because there's no lawful allowance for them.
He followed the Oklahoma statutes. Okay,
come on. I mean, I'm a comedian. Define riot. Ever since the Patriot Act, I get on the phone. I can't say I bombed. I can't say I killed. I can't say riot.
I'm telling you, you are about to get a federal definition of it, because what happened here was last week they found out in Gallup, New Mexico, which is right on the edge of the Navajo Indian Reservation, big reservation. And, just outside of there, you got a Walmart, your other trading posts and stuff. And
Trading
middle
those.
of last month, all these people got their federal bailout money, their stimulus money. What do? Let's
I
go
don't
to
know.
Walmart. Okay. And
They all went to Gallup.
yeah, so according to the state representative from the Gallup area in the New Mexico legislature, the town was crawling with people, nobody following these protocols.
Because they finally had some income.
Yes.
And they went to put it into the market.
Yes.
And then they were like, well, you want me to act like you.
All of a sudden, you've got a convergence of a few things. You've got a big drug detox center there in Gallup. You got a massive amount of homeless people because, again, this is the Route 66 corridor. And when winter's getting over, it's time for them to migrate back to the Northeast, right? So all the people that, the homeless that go down to Southern California. So there's enough of that going on. And then, of course, you got all these people coming in. And all of a sudden, boom, you've got well over 1,000 people so far tested. Actually, it's close to 2,000. And so the governor decided he was going to declare a state of riot. He actually used the language of the Oklahoma statutes. Now, this is important, Tom. All these legislators have their annual convention every year. The Republicans call it ALEC, okay? ALIC. And
what is ALEC, Alec?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, it's some legislators' kumbaya.
American Legislative and Economics Council or something.
Please answer in the form of a question.
But they compare each other's statutory writings and decide, oh, you got a good idea. I'll take that back to Oklahoma. Or, oh, well, and sometimes they'll do really good things and debate it. So they do actually hold each other somewhat accountable. There are some good things happening there.
Nice.
But so what happens?
ALEC, just so everybody knows, our local ALEC representative is actually really good. She's
nice.
She's an attorney, I think. I think she's got a degree. I think she's an attorney, and we've had some great conversations. So
yeah, I mean,
cool.
Gary Stanislawski and I talked a great deal about. He goes every year. He learns so much from it. Okay, so they can serve a good purpose. But the point is, an idea like the Oklahoma Riot Act, Emergency Act, now all of a sudden it might have come from New Mexico. Who knows? Or they might have got from something.
It's in the
yeah, it's a thing. Yeah.
Okay.
But the thing is, it's a misuse of the definition of the word riot.
So
That's all.
I'm getting to
all
that.
right. I'm sorry.
So my point is that I think what you're going to see here is a federal court case, a civil rights case, where a judge or a panel of judges, 10th Circuit or whoever, is going to have to say, was this not an abuse of the Riot Act, using it not for any unrest, because you did not see any lawlessness here.
Yeah.
But they're using it to establish a curfew where not the health department head, but the governor gets to crack down.
Well, and here's the problem, is that we are going to have unrest, and there is going to be actual riots and insurrection and all sorts of problems. I mean, Michigan has armed protests right now.
Yes.
In fact, they forced their way into the Michigan State House. They couldn't get into. They actually did it quite peaceably, but they went in armed. They weren't allowed to take in their signs, but they could.
They have a constitutional right to be armed, don't they?
We all do.
Yes.
But and they don't deprive that at the state capitol.
Good.
In Michigan, as we do in Oklahoma.
Yes. Yep.
So but it has been out on the streets and so forth. I mean, in Dallas, we've got armed citizens who have basically come daily to the salon owner, Shelley, who has kept her a la mode salon open. Remember the a la mode?
Yeah.
And in Dallas.
Remember the a la mode? Okay.
And so
ice cold, David.
Hey, I think that may be her catchphrase. I don't know, but
Good enough.
I didn't make it up. But the point is that we are going to see, before long, we are going to see actual riots taking place, but they're all caused by illegitimate, lawless government. It is not, and they're only calling for a return to law and order. They're not calling for lawlessness, which is the point of the statutes. It's because of the lawless behavior of government usurping power that they have not been granted, like trying to use the because it says health and safety in the Riot Act. You know, riots are a detriment to the public health and safety, which they can be. And just because it says health and safety, Stitt and his team decided that they were going to choose that to therefore dictate to the rest of us.
Yes.
And New Mexico is doing the exact same thing, because there is nothing in any state constitution or statute that can grant the governor such powers. Why? Because we still have a 4th and 5th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, and the U.S. Bill of Rights, the U.S. Constitution's Bill of Rights, is supreme over every one of us.
Yeah.
And so that is, it's ludicrous. We have to bring, and Tom, you mentioned something that I wanted to bring up.
Yeah.
This house of cards that these mayors and governors are relying on. Like Murphy said, it's above my pay grade. You know, I didn't consider the Bill of Rights when I made my decisions.
Wow.
He's the governor of New Jersey. He told Tucker Carlson that on national news, on Fox News. Have you guys not seen the video?
I heard about it. I didn't see the video.
It's on constitutional grounds. Go watch it. It's amazing. But they keep, and as you pointed out, Tom, they point to someone else. It's always pointing to someone else. Hey, that's why Burgermeister Bynum wanted to have the citizen
oversight committee,
citizen police oversight committee.
Yeah.
Okay. Why? Because then he has somebody to point to that kind of takes the onus off of him, at least gives the facade that he doesn't have to obey his oath of office and actually oversee and do his job when it comes to the police, because he wants to give the police all that latitude to, I don't know his motives, but he's not going to impose himself, as is his duty, between us and the police force.
It's rule by group or commune instead of individualized person making a leadership decision. He wants it to be in the hands of a group that votes.
Well, so he says. I'm saying that it's a house of cards. It's just to keep up the facade that he doesn't have responsibility, when constitutionally he has 100% of the responsibility.
And what I'm saying is, in his heart, he doesn't believe he has the ability as a human, because he is human. It's not that he thinks lowly of himself, but he thinks anyone like me, even me, can't be held to such a high responsibility to make a singular decision for the group. I must have everybody get together and all vote on it, which is it's antithetical to our system. We have a strong leader and not a group leadership.
I would disagree with you on the point that you make.
Okay.
Because it really isn't about that, because he goes to the council and the council will make decisions as the group. What he wants is a separate group to advise him about his responsibility, and then he can point to them and say, hey, they decided I'm not really liable, when in reality the buck stops at the top, as Truman said.
Okay, let me reset real quick. I got more to say on that, but real quick. real quickly, you're watching 3D Politics. We've knocked down 3 15-minute segments. My guess is we're going to do 2 extra ones by the time we're done. We got a lot of time. But here I am, Tommy McKay, 3D Politics Live, right here on Facebook with David Vann and David Oldham, talking about all of the stuff that's quite important here in Tulsa. And I got to say, with Bynum, though, if I could really reach out there to try to connect the dots in a way where I maintain consistency, it's the same reason I hate the coaches challenge in NFL football is the same reason I hate the Citizens Oversight Committee when it comes to police enforcement. When in the hell does somebody ever make a decision? When can a person say, I said it's wrong? No, there you go, we're done. I don't have to get external validation from a group of oversight watchdogs who are also on the take for another 5 reasons. I don't need that.
Yeah, and it's often because what you've got is a spineless mayor who decides what his convictions are based on the latest polls. And on that, I don't want to hold David Holt harmless here, the mayor of Oklahoma City.
OKC, that's right.
Said, by God, I am going to show that I have some muscle. Everybody who goes out to shop must wear a mask. Well, as soon as there was a little blow up and threat of violence at one store this weekend, he rescinded the mask order.
Wait a minute, I thought that was Stillwater. I thought that was Stillwater.
Stillwater definitely did that. Did Holt have the same problem?
Holt has rescinded the Oklahoma City one.
It also happened in Stillwater also.
Well, and this is my point, is I don't believe that they're spineless. They are cowardly in the sense that they want to impose the police goon squad on us at their behest. Now, mind you, the police don't want to be their goon squad, but that is the way when you listen to Holt and Bynum talk, they talk as though they are, forceful and powerful, and they're going to turn the police loose. Like Bynum said, he has given them permission to cite who they need to cite.
Okay.
And
Holt is Oklahoma City, correct?
Yes.
And so what were you going to say, Van?
Well, and Holt is a former state senator. He and Nathan Dahm used to go back and forth on things because there were very, very contradictory philosophies of the role of government between those two guys. Okay. But what I want to say here, I want to make a distinction. I'm going to stand up for private commerce a little bit. If a shop owner has a rule, whether or not it's backed up by the health department, advisors, best practice, anything, when a shop owner says, hey, these are my rules, you want to come in my shop, I totally defend that. And I want to give as an example. A couple hours ago, my wife came home from running down to Whole Foods. Whole Foods said, we'd like you to wear a mask, and we're providing it for you. You want to shop in here today? Out of respect for some of the people here who are very concerned and are fragile, and we're asking everybody to. If you don't want to do that, fine. We're not making you shop here, but these are our rules. And I can disagree with them. I can protest, I can boycott, I can do whatever, but they lawfully have a right to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So the problem here is
boycott, but I would also be the first one to defend their right to do what they've done.
The government, whichever one it is, federal, state, and local, they are wiggling the post so hard that earlier, remember, we were telling a person that is in business to do bakery goods, you have to bake a cake.
Yeah.
And then later we're telling people who have breasts, oh, you can go topless if you want. Now we're telling people you gotta wear a mask. Yeah. So it's like we're in and out on anything we do. So what I'm saying is here, we're not only going to prohibit some people from doing business, we're going to insist by force that some people do business.
Yes.
And remember,
you're gonna have to do business.
Right. No.
And Tom, remember what is antithetical to proper regulation, prohibitions, and dictates.
Mm-hmm.
And the dictate
on our sovereignty, on our personal domain. our
Yeah.
personal bubble, if you will, that
No.
they have no
Van.
authority to dictate
So-
about.
It's
So-
correct, Van.
What I want to say here, there's a difference between the no shirt, no shoes, no service, or any ordinance that might require, women to wear proper clothing to cover up in that.
Two masks.
And it all has to do is what will you ordinarily have, possession of anyway.
Something
Remember,
reasonable.
2 months ago, we were told do not buy a mask. Leave those for people who need them. Remember that? And
Yeah.
then by the time they changed their minds on it, all the masks were gone.
You can't even shop without a mask.
I don't even own a mask, and I don't know where to get one.
Okay.
I want to know if I get a mask tattooed to my face, will that count?
Yeah. So my thing, hey, I got a catcher's mask.
I have fielded a number of phone calls from people around the country because of constitutional grounds, asking if, because of the new airline, I don't know if you heard, the major airlines are now requiring masks for flights.
Okay, before you go there, Van, finish your point.
Yeah, so my point is one of the strongest legal arguments against David Holt's Oklahoma City rule was if the government's going to make you have something you ordinarily wouldn't have, and in particular at a time when they're difficult to get, the government has a duty to provide those. And that's the difference between what Whole Foods did today when they provided my wife a mask, let her take it home with her, and what the government of Oklahoma City was trying to do.
They didn't reuse her mask?
Oh, no.
A tea strainer.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm done with that topic.
So here's the thing. And I completely concur that they have the right. The problem is, as a private company, the problem is the complicity with lawless government. I have a major problem with that. That's why I would be the first one to boycott a Whole Foods and reject their mask and everything like that, and tell them to take a flying leap. But the other thing is how much of the actions of Whole Foods is because of lawless government, because they are afraid for one reason or another, one license, one agency or another, that they have to use it.
Professor, it's because people don't understand that there is an equality between arbitrary use of the law is literally lawlessness.
Yeah.
But when they see laws everywhere and you say the word lawless, they're like, what are you talking about? Lawless? My God, it's pouring down on me.
Yeah.
Laws everywhere. But the fact is, because it's the application of the law is arbitrary, there is no standard.
Yeah.
That's why it's lawless.
Yeah. And I would
that's
say
one
something that mitigates it even further is, am I to obey the public policy of the government of February or May? Because the two are diametrically opposed.
Well, there are a number of things that can help you understand whether something is lawless. Number one, is it arbitrary? I mean, just go to the Declaration of Independence. Look at the indictments of the king. We are doing every one of those things that he was indicted for, and that we separated our governments because of it, and they're doing it now. Is it arbitrary? Is it constitutional? Is it in line with the Constitution? Is it a usurpation of powers? Is it, grabbing for themselves powers that they don't lawfully possess?
Right.
That haven't been given. And does it violate individual rights? So if you look at those four things, it becomes very clear very quickly where something is. And if it violates any one of those four things, it is lawlessness, because our Constitution is codified that they can't be doing those things.
It's important, as you and I know here on 3D Politics, to live by law. and not by a man. And so what we're finding out with this mask rule is we're being shamed by GT Bynum and the rest of us. If you don't wear a mask, you're a bad person. And if you do wear a mask, you're a good person.
Yes,
you're a bad person, Tom.
Well,
I mean, not me personally, but yeah.
And this piggybacks on one of Oldham's earlier points, and yours too, Tom, is that you would think that the biggest industries, the biggest players corporately might be the bullies, when in fact, when it comes down to it, they are the most cowardly, the most prone to virtue signaling, to bending over and taking in the rear end, you know, especially on government edicts. And it's the little guy, it's the mom and pops businesses that many times have to do the heavy hauling of defending constitutional liberties.
And that's what we're seeing. Around the country, that's what we're seeing. Because the mom and pops have been shut down. Well, they were just summarily shut down, declared non-essential.
Yes.
And shut down, shuttered. And because of that, we're seeing they have to be the ones to step up. They are shouldering an unfair burden because, hey, none of these giant corporations are paying for the legal fees of these mom and pop shops who are having to pay lawyers to defend them in municipal court, in state court, in federal court, to try to just stave off all of this lawless government that has imposed itself. I mean, you can rip up citations, but when they come in and break all your stuff, break down your doors, arrest you, throw you in prison, and break your stuff and put guards outside so nobody can open your business for you, what are you left with?
So before we reset,
we the people have to rise up and put a stop to this.
Yeah, but before we reset, back to a point I was trying to make, and I don't know if I really hammered it in, is that if we settle our arguments by law, then it's not about whether wearing a mask is right or wrong according to one man's opinion. See, it's about what is the law. Can you force me to wear a mask? Not is it right or wrong? Am I a bad person or a good person based on whether I wear a mask? So this is why we want rule of law, not rule of GT Bynum shame you if you swim in the sewers when it's overflowing and don't wear a mask. We're not to be ruled by men. We're to be ruled by law. And so this is why the argument of the mask should be settled by law, not whether I'm a bad person because I don't wear a mask. Tommy McKay here by law, not whether I'm a bad person because I don't wear a mask. Tommy McKay here, 3D Politics Live. David Oldham, constitutionalgrounds.com, and David Van, soonerpolitics.org. Gentlemen, I know I've got more to talk about. I don't know about you guys. I do want to bring up something on a national point because earlier this last year, I had to argue soccer, David Oldham, and they were telling me that the women don't make as much as the men, and that's a damned lie. According to Forbes, March 7th, 2019, the women do you think these women make a contract by themselves to make money? Don't you think they're in a union? Don't you know that these soccer players are in a union and they don't decide their individual wage? And so the women's union, the players' union, decided that the women will get 13% of the contracts, and the men's contract was for 9%. So technically, according to Forbes, women are paid more for soccer than men. And isn't it amazing that they dredged out this dead thing that I already beat to death in 2019 just so Joe Biden can have something to talk about? And plus, I love lesbians who kick round balls.
I did not have dredged this up in the last week or two.
Jesus, you had to just now bringing this up. to tell us how it is that Joe Biden's going to help out the lesbian soccer players that rip their shirt off right at the end of my show, you know, because I'll do that next for ratings, you know, because I'm cut.
I'm sure that the ones you're talking about are probably Democrats.
Look, I don't care if they're lesbian. I'm just saying they're out there. They're saying they don't get paid as much. They represent the LBGT community. That's them. And they're saying they don't get paid equal pay. And it's, according to Forbes, not true.
It's weird. It depends upon how you look at the numbers. Part of the problem is, I mean, we could go in and talk soccer and talk pay.
I doubt it.
But it comes back to here's the thing, and it was a big thing right before they shut soccer down,
which they should have done in 1890.
But, here's the problem, is that the women they were talking about because it's a government paycheck that they are getting when they play for the national team, the women are paid less than the men. It isn't about a percentage of the take. It is about just raw numbers. The women get less.
No.
And because it's government, it's a national team.
No. Then if you carry those numbers out, they put in 20% less too. So it all comes out equal.
Yeah. I did not know that it was a federal agency of sports that is paying.
And if that,
I believe there is actually federal money that helps support this stuff.
It would probably be a grant.
That.
Okay, well then they need to can that. Then they need to can that along with all the other nonprofit organizations, as well as NPR and the other one.
The federal government has no authority.
They can all that crap. I never pay. What general welfare do I get from women's soccer? My God.
I enjoy it.
Yeah,
but
it's you, Mr. Anecdote.
Not have a hand in it whatsoever.
So
it's tough to be a cop today, Tom.
Tell us about the cop-on-cop violent obedience feedback loop. Two cops are saying, you obey me. No, you obey me. Oh, yeah, I've got my gun on you. Well, you obey me first, or I'll tase you.
Yeah. This is the police chief of Webbers Falls, Oklahoma.
Oh, my, how the tables have turned.
This is Muskogee County for anybody who doesn't know.
Well, I won't be driving through there.
Remember, just almost a year ago, Webbers Falls was all underwater. And if you remember, about 30 years ago, Webbers Falls was the default I-44, while the bridge on I-40 was in the Arkansas River. That's same Webbers Falls. Oldham wouldn't know. That was before his time.
I mean, I-40 was detoured through Webbers Falls?
Yes.
Okay.
Because a barge hit the bridge and knocked it down and killed a bunch of people who were driving on I-40. Well, anyway, it's the same Webbers Falls. Has nothing to do with this cop. This cop decided.
Wow.
It's a little dinky, teeny, tiny town for anybody who wants to know.
That's a backstory.
That ran into their locks.
So the other night, I get a call from a friend of mine who's a former police chief. And I said, well, you know, what you got going on nowadays? And he says, well, I did get a call from the city manager of Webbers Falls, wanting to know if I was interested in applying for a police department job. Who wants to come into that mess and clean up the bad morale? So let's get people up to speed. We don't know a lot of the details of what maybe egged it on, but this guy beat the snot out of one of his employees. And I don't know.
Did it go that far?
Tom, how do you prevent this kind of thing?
Well, you ask somebody to obey. You simply ask them to obey commands, more specifically. You know, I know it's confusing.
You
do what I say.
You ask them by demanding, right?
Yes. So I'm wondering.
You poke them in the ribs with a stick, and if every time they move, you say, stay still. And then you have Bob Bates run in and tase them.
The problem is when you got two cops each telling the other to obey my orders. You know?
That's
So-
why I say it's a cop on cop violence obedience feedback loop. If you'll
Yes.
just do what I say, you'll never take me
Now-
alive, copper. Oh yeah, come
Now-
out or we're taking you alive.
Yeah, and normally I wouldn't make this a deal tonight, but you remember just a few months ago, we had the chief of police in Manford, Oklahoma, just 20 minutes west of Tulsa here, killed by one of his own deputies.
Yeah,
I mean,
that
he's
ought to be
dead.
illegal.
Murder, beat the snot of, literally blunt force trauma, pounded his face until he's dead.
If you don't remember it, is it really murder? I mean,
You know,
I don't remember.
and we've got.
I mean, really.
Yeah.
Here's the problem with if I could try to be serious, which is a real stretch for me, this cop on cop violence thing illustrates the ludicrousness of the nature of the concept. If you'll just obey, then everything will. No, this existential reality is it's a force on force battle. You can't just make somebody wear a mask and force somebody to get off the bus and make somebody not sell a cigarette. I mean, you know, you can't just tase people to death.
Yes. And I'm telling you, I'm glad you see that tie in there, because when you got unconstitutional rules, you got vague rules, you've got things on the books that nobody enforces anymore, but yet they still on the books. And every citizen is told, remember this in high school, that ignorance of the law is no justification. It's up to every citizen to know every statute in Oklahoma. Oh my God.
No,
You know,
that's not true.
well, the cops will tell you it's true.
Well, that's the way they act, but remember, they're acting lawlessly.
Right.
And the point is that if we understand the Constitution, the Supreme Law, it's really simple to understand what should be going on and why you might have some specific stuff. But they have gone so far beyond, you know, just treating your neighbor well and getting along with each other. So to the point that it is reached the point that you can have two cops arguing with one another and the chief beating them up, and we still don't know why, because there's been no details.
But what we do know is that one cop could not follow the instructions that both cops give us, and that is just obey with the cops. Literally neither cop can obey with either cop. Okay, so this shows you the idea of obedience to the cops doesn't work, because neither they obey nor do they quit beating the hell out of you if you obey.
Well, and interestingly, it is the superior who was arrested. It was the cop in the cop citizen scenario here, the chief who was arrested, and not the one who needed to obey, the underling. And it's amazing how that doesn't translate to when a police officer accosts a citizen wrongly. And they're granted qualified immunity, and hey, they're just doing their job. They may have screwed up, but they're just trying. They're trying.
And that's so important, is because, again, the human nature wants to consolidate power, right? It says we want more power, and that's a problem with the fallen nature of man. And it comes, again, our governor did it, wrongfully declared a state of riot when no riot exists. Now, is there a state of riot? We're getting pretty close to some pretty big outbursts here if this goes on. But we've been polite, we've been law-abiding, and more than law-abiding for the last 6 weeks.
Correct.
But we've got this real problem happening here. And remember, let's go back to a year ago with Blanchard, Oklahoma. A guy just minding his own business, going to meet somebody to do an insurance appraisal at his house, and the cops come up and say, hey, we want to know who you are and why you're parked here. And he refused to comply. And they arrested him for obstructing an investigation. Oh, that sounds so statutory, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Except the problem was all he did was not answer their questions, which
Which
begs
is
the
his
question.
Fifth Amendment
What-
right.
Which begs the question. The first thing you do when you arrest somebody is tell them they have a right to remain silent.
Well, this is clearly a chicken and egg situation. When did the investigation begin, and what did it know?
Well, then this is the argument that the stupid argument that's made in court all the time. Well, we didn't arrest him. We were asking him questions. At that point, he needed to answer our questions. He didn't, so therefore it's obstruction. If we had arrested him, then he would have had the right to remain silent. It's like no. That's not what the Fifth Amendment says.
Right.
You know, there's a thing that happens, and it's human nature, once again, hearkening back to what Van just said, and it occurs in the mind of the officer. And just like words have connotation of meaning beyond their literal definition, that is, odor is the same thing as fragrance, but they mean entirely different things in connotation. And so law, when it's applied by the officer, there's a connotative area of enforcement that exceeds the legal written area. And so this is why when for instance, the standard thing back in the 70s where the officer is frisking the woman, but he accidentally gets a hold of her breasts. And that's that connotative law where he can, because right there he is. And it's not really written into the law that he has the ability, but the connotative nature of the laws, they exceed what is written. And this occurs even with the governor committing this idea of a state of riot when none exists. And they're exceeding, they're using the written law and exceeding it through connotative use. Yeah. It's the same thing when the weather girl says it's 35 degrees, but the wind chill factor says, well, I mean, you can just pick a number then,
Yeah, but what I want to say, and this is advice to my friends who are serving in public service, whether it's an appointed office, hired, elected, or whatever, is that we have a self-deception. Remember the old scripture going way, way back to, I guess it's in Genesis. It says, and there was no law, and everybody did what was right in their own eyes.
Right.
Well, here's what happens.
That's in Judges, by the way.
Okay, thank you. Good. So here's what we run into, and I'll take Governor Stitt like this, because remember, if Governor Stitt was a Democrat, if Drew Edmondson had done this, I think Drew Edmondson would be in danger of impeachment with our House because he's a Democrat and the Republicans are in control. Now, the good old boy system works here, in a corrupt way, because now all of a sudden we judge our party a lot softer than we judge the other party because our intentions are good, don't you know? And so Governor Stitt wanted to do something good, and he says, how do I accomplish this? Right. Unfortunately, he violated the law, abused the law, in order to do what was good in his own eyes. And this is an important thing here, folks, because the self-deception happens so easy, easy.
That area right there is where what you explained beautifully is where I contend with people that say, well, we need somebody to go up there and do the right thing. No, that wasn't me to go up there and do the right thing. I want you to go up there and represent us. Go do what we said. Don't go up there and make your own mind up about to do the right thing in your eyes about what you think is the right decision. That's not what I sent you there for. Represent me. Do what I say.
You're about to get a caveat from Oldham.
Well,
Oldham, please.
Tom's absolutely correct.
Except that it's got to be constitutional.
The Constitution.
There you go. Yeah.
And
just gang up on me.
Because they do go up, and what they claim is that they are going up and representing the people. In fact, when you listen to them talk, it's like, I had to save the people. I had to do what was best for the people. The people who sent me, I got so many people who wanted, some unconstitutional act. They wanted to shut down.
Which is populism. It's nothing but populism.
The hysterics outnumbered us law and order types.
Yeah.
For the last 6 weeks.
If you guys are 3dpoliticslive.com. I got David Vann from SoonerPolitics.org and David Oldham from ConstitutionalGrounds.com. The two most important Davids right here in the state of Oklahoma. I think we got time for one more 15-minute segment, boys. I got my soccer routine out of the way, so I'm done with that one. But did you hear Mark Cuban? He made some comment about how he was upset. Another round ball idiot. He was saying that the federal government should have hired all these people that they forced out of work, which I made the point last week. It's not unemployment when the government prohibits you from working and then promises to pay you back with welfare money that's your money anyway. It's your money anyway. They're going to pay you back, but we're not going to let you work. Okay, so Mark Cuban was chiding the federal government, I guess Trump, on Twitter for saying he should have hired all these people. Okay, and I'm like, dude, here's a guy who's operating as a monarch in his capitalist world properly. He owns his players, and my comment on Twitter was, yeah, but the president doesn't own his players.
Yeah.
And furthermore, if we are governed by ourselves, then we cannot hire ourselves and then pay ourselves welfare after we fire ourselves. It's ridiculous. Mark Cuban, may be brilliant in some way or an ancient alien, but this is a ridiculous statement that we should just hire everybody that we forced to quit their job. Why don't you just call it what it is? Socialism. I mean, it's just a government-controlled centralization of a workforce. My God, just because you play basketball, do you think you got basketball privilege like the rest of them? Yeah, okay, that's my. What else you got before we get out of here?
Hey, we got to talk about Bridenstine and his buddy Justin Amash.
I was shuddered to the core to find out that, the way I thought about it is Bridenstine's a libertarian. What? And then I found out, well, that's not the story. Bridenstine's not a libertarian. What's the connection with Bridenstine and the freaks?
Oldham, why don't you go ahead and tell them what who Justin Amash is?
Well, Justin Amash is a Michigan House of Representatives congressman, and he changed parties from the
U.S. House of Representatives.
U.S. House of Representatives.
Yeah,
and he changed parties from the Republican Party to the Libertarian Party, about 6 months ago?
Yeah.
And
there he is.
Roughly. And so there you've got a picture of him up in the top. He's one of the guys that I have really enjoyed in the House because he actually, I think he's actually less libertarian than he is constitutional. And so I have really enjoyed his time along with Thomas Massey and a couple of other guys, just because they really have lived out the Constitution.
Right.
Justin has now decided to throw his hat in the ring for the Libertarian presidential nomination.
Yes.
And he's coming from behind because he started so late. And
yes.
David,
hey, Oldham,
numbers.
Oldham, before you go into that, let me just say, he was a Republican.
Yes.
And largely because of a tiff he's had with Donald Trump. He made one or two disparaging comments. I kind of let it go. And I was like, my God, this guy's got it in for Trump. And he actually voted for Trump's impeachment. Okay. So I just need to set it up that way. He is
for both counts or just one? I think it was just one.
Both.
Was it both counts? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just want to say this guy has some animosity towards Trump. He really feels that Trump is not fit to be president.
Well, even if you don't, why would you damage yourself with a libertarian label?
Well, he did not join the Libertarian Party right away. In fact, a lot of libertarians...
He went independent first.
Yes, he did. And there were a number of independent or libertarians that kind of hold that against him and say, you could have switched to libertarian right off the bat, and you didn't. And now all of a sudden...
In fact, even
You
though
want
I'm
our
not a,
endorsement. Now you decide you're libertarian when you
that's
want our
right.
endorsement.
Yes, drink or don't drink, get on or off the bus. Pick your
Yeah.
team. Yeah.
Okay, Oldham, I interrupted you, so I'm
No,
gonna.
no, it's fine.
Yeah.
My point was just that now he's running for the presidential nomination in the Libertarian Party, which of all of, well, I don't know about the other minor players in the minor parties, is easier to win, and he's got more name recognition than any of the other players other than Vermin Supreme.
Okay, well that answers the question
For the Libertarian nomination.
Yeah.
Well, and let's explain that. Bill Weld, former governor of Massachusetts, ran on the ticket with Gary Johnson. You had a couple former Republican governors running as the ticket 4 years ago. And a lot of people thought Weld might try running top of the ticket this time. He didn't. Weld switched back to Republican and decided to challenge Trump in the Republican primaries. But the funny thing was, most of the state Republican parties decided, you know what, we aren't even going to have a primary, and that kind of screwed it for Weld, right?
I don't know what he was thinking, because if you want to run, you run as a libertarian, then you might get on the stage and actually have a chance to run against Trump, but you're never going to outdo the primary.
Now,
right.
Again, you got, I believe it's from Connecticut, you have Lincoln Chafee, a guy who was Republican, then he switched to independent, and then he joined the Democrats in the Senate. So he switched party. So he went Republican to independent to Democrat to Libertarian. And now he pulled out of the race. So you've had a lot of false starts here. So it kind of left a void here. There's no big name.
No, and I was surprised at who has been coming out on top in so many of the numbers that you put up on Sooner Politics.
Yeah.
I was really surprised that Vermin Supreme won New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And quite pleasantly surprised. But I'm trying to remember the other gentleman's name that it seemed to be on top of the libertarian thoughts through so many of the various states. And not that they've really had a chance to hold many conventions, because they just haven't.
Right. And, I've been to a couple of the libertarian conventions here in Oklahoma covering it as a journalist. And to them, the fact that a candidate for president shows up means something, and they respect that. When I covered them in 2016 over in Stillwater, a candidate from Texas showed up. By God, he got some votes. Now, 4 years ago, we had some legitimate names. You had John McAfee, you had Austin Peterson, and you had Gary Johnson were the three biggest names.
Right.
And you don't have that kind of gravitas anymore. And so, there's the problem. But again, I've been at these things, and most of these were probably state convention polls that took place, because I think, didn't I show about 15 or 20 states?
You did, and a lot of them were straw polls, so they're not necessarily binding. And I think the libertarians are gonna elect they will actually do the traditional electing of their candidate at convention rather than through the state. So they'll do an actual convention, have a real convention, not just a rubber stamp.
Yes. And in fact, to that point, 4 years ago when I was covering it and they elected the delegates, I went around to several of the delegates that got elected, and I did my own straw polling, and I found it pretty well split amongst the three top candidates. So, yes, they truly do a national convention like the Republicans and Democrats used to do 100 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it will be interesting to see what will come. And with the debacle of COVID and the handling of governments around the country, and Trump being backed into a corner, and we know that economy wins,
Mm-hmm.
and and or loses a presidency,
Yeah.
that this could, it will be interesting to see how things pan out politically speaking, as we come down to the wire. We already know that Trump will be the Republican nominee, just given the way that things have gone. But we don't know about the Libertarian and whether or not there will be a strong showing there. And now there's been question about the Democrats. Are they really gonna stay with Joe because of his problems? Tara Reid from my hometown, San Luis Obispo, California, is wreaking havoc on him for something that happened 30 years ago, and she didn't get justice then, but it's being proved that she did seek it and was denied it. So this whole, and now all the Me Too'ers are backing Joe and not backing Tara.
Yep.
You know,
so that is all. And does that mean that socialist Bernie is back in play?
So speaking of debacle and government control, the only people who are in charge of flyovers to honor heroes and bombings is government. And when it comes to debacles, it couldn't have happened better than in Bartlesville this week when they decided to fly over to thank those heroes. And let me recall also a thing I learned just 2 weeks ago. Not all heroes can sing. Some heroes are tone deaf, but also hear the government debacle. Thank God it wasn't a bombing run in Bartlesville. They were just supposed to fly over and thank the heroes from the TikTok videos that we've seen wearing their undergarments on the outside, but the Bartlesville flyover was an entire debacle as they missed their sight. They flew and missed their sight. They veered off before they even went. If they were dropping bombs, they would have killed civilians or otherwise missed their target. So all they were trying to do is fly over and thank you. But guess what? They couldn't even fly over to say thank you to the people who are supposedly off-key singing heroes.
I got some trivia for you, Tom.
All right.
Remember we talked to Kenny Bob Tapp, the state representative candidate from Boise City?
Boise City, correct.
You know why the flyover was not over Boise City?
No.
I will tell you, there is a state museum in Boise City from World War II. It's to commemorate when the military accidentally bombed Boise City, Oklahoma.
Oh, wow.
That's a whole show.
It happened. I am disappointed that Kenny Bob Tapp didn't pitch the Boise City bombing memorial, but it happened.
It proves Oldham's ongoing point of the connection between debacle and government. That is all the time we have today, gentlemen. You know we've got more to come next week on Monday, every Monday, on Facebook Live. I am Tommy McKay, Tom E. McKay on Facebook and Twitter. Catch me also, McKay at 3dpoliticslive.com. I've got David Vann, Soonerpolitics.org, and David Oldham right there on constitutionalgrounds.com. We're going to catch you next week right here on 3D Politics Live.